Lesson 5.6, using multiplicative inverse. Multiplicative inverse is the number's reciprocal. It's really all you need to write down, is that it's the number's reciprocal. It's really just another name for reciprocal. So for example, 2/3, the multiplicative inverse would be 3/2. And remember, reciprocal definition is when you multiply the number and its reciprocal together, you end up with a product of 1. And that happens anytime you multiply by the reciprocal, or the multiplicative inverse. The multiplicative inverse property is just that when when the product of the number and its multiplicative inverse is 1. You can see 3 times 5 is 15, 5 times 3 is 15, 15/15 is 1. Solving a one-step equation. To solve a one-step equation, when you have a fraction, you want to multiply by its multiplicative inverse, because you're trying to get the 3/5 to be 1, to cancel out. So we multiply by the multiplicative inverse of 3/5 to both sides. This cancels out to be 1. And then 5/3 times 15 is 25. And again, you can just multiply, cancel out the common factors. 5 times 5 is 25. So try problems 1 and 2. Remember to multiply by the multiplicative inverse to clear the side with the variable. Number 1, we multiply by 11/6. Cancels out on that side. Do the exact same number on the other side. Divide out common factors. X equals 3 times 11, 33. Number 2, you do want to multiply by the negative. 13/7. 7 and 28 divide out. Four times -13 is -52. This time we're going to solve a two-step equation. Okay, I know there's a lot of fractions here, but remember your rules for solving a two-step equation. The first step is to add the opposite. Okay, they say subtract. I like to call it adding the opposite. It's the same thing. Okay, this is to clear the constant. The whole point of this is to clear the constant, and the constant is 3/4. So we're going to, this is adding 3/4, so I'm going to add a negative or subtract. It doesn't matter, whichever one you can make sense to you, you can say. This clears to 0. So bring down what's left over. We have to write the fractions using an LCD, so we have to change 1/2 to 2/4. Subtract 3/4, and you have -1/4. Now this is just like a one-step problem. So here's my second step. Multiply each side by the multiplicative inverse. Again, the whole point of this was to clear the coefficient. The coefficient in this case is the -7/12. So we multiply both sides by -12/7. When you multiply fractions, look in the numerator and denominator to clear out the numbers that have the same common factors. So you have 2 negatives make it positive, so you have 3 times 1 is 3, 7 times 1 is 7. So x equals 3/7. Remember, you can always go back and check. Okay, and I know there's a lot of fractions, but go back and check by placing 3/7 into the problem, check to see if it equals 1/2. That way you know that you got the problem right. In example 3, the height of a certain Norway spruce is 10 feet. If the tree's height grows 2.5 feet per year, find how long it will take the tree to reach a height of 25. So that's our goal, is to get to 25 feet. It started at 10. It's 2.5 feet per year. When we see that word per, this is multiplying by the number of years. So there's our equation, 10 plus 2.5 times x equals 25. First step, clear the constant. Okay, how do we clear the constant? Add the opposite. In this case, we could subtract or add a negative. The constant's the one that does not have the variable, so that's your 10. This is your constant. Think back to when we did equations. Okay, 2.5 is called your coefficient. It's working with the variable. So subtract 10 from both sides. That gets rid of the 10s on the left side. Bring down 2.5x. 25 minus 10 is 15. Now we have a one-step problem. It's to clear the coefficient. It is a fraction, so to clear the coefficient here, we need to multiply by its multiplicative inverse, which is 2/5. Do that to both sides. This becomes 1, which you don't need because 1 times x is x. And then 2/5 times 15. Divide out common factors. 2 times 3, 6/1, which is just 6. The tree will be 25 feet tall after 6 years.